And hello, welcome one and all to the Extreme Improv Skill Show here on the Extremed TV podcast network. So welcome everyone, hope you're having a fantastic day wherever you are, whatever you're doing. This is just going to be a quick podcast, as the skill shows always are, just to discuss a particular improv skill or game. Now, this one has been requested for quite some time. It is one of the Extreme Improv original games, and when I say that, it may not be original. It may not be that original, even if it's fairly original, but what it is the reverse alphabet scene. So obviously, a traditional alphabet scene, or as it's known to most people, an alphabet scene, is a scene for two performers where every time a new line of dialogue is spoken by a performer, it must begin with the next letter of the alphabet compared to the previous line of dialogue. A reverse alphabet scene, very simply, puts that going backwards, so the alphabet goes in the reverse order. So this may be an original Extreme Improv game. As far as I know, I did actually make this game up, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if someone else said that they'd played it somewhere at some point in time. But unless they can prove that it wasn't me that invented it, I'm going to take the credit on this one, which is fine. If someone, improv games, they should be played by anyone and everyone, and that is part of the purpose of the skills show here today, to give you some tips of how to play the game successfully so that you can play them whether you're doing it in a improv show, in a workshop, a classroom, and if you're just playing it on a Thursday night, friends, come round, you want to play some improv games. So before we get going on the tips for playing it, let me just remind you to smash that subscribe button wherever you're listening to this. If you're listening to it as the pure audio podcast version, then if you are on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts, whatever you're listening it to on, Spreaker, anywhere else, any of the platforms, Spotify, smash the subscribe button. Now, if you really want to help us out, go over to youtube.com/Extreme Improv and smash the subscribe button there as well. And now that those plugs are out the way, let's get on with the reverse alphabet scene. So once again, just to break this down fully, let's talk about, just so we're all on the same page beginning here, how an alphabet scene works. You'll have two performers in a scene, and they'll be given a scenario, and let's say the scenario is that they are at a bank. Now, at the bank, they're going to have whatever unfold in the story, and you're going to perform a scene, a two-hander scene. But every time a new line of dialogue is started by a performer, it must begin with the next letter of the alphabet compared to the last line of dialogue. And that's important just to clarify that, because some people don't understand that. When I say the next letter of the alphabet, they think compared to what? What my last sentence was? What the last letter used on the last word? No. So, just to give you the example with some bad voices just to distinguish, character 1 might be starting at the letter A, and so they might say, "Are you okay?" Character 2 might say, "But why do you ask? Can't you see I'm trying to make a withdrawal here at the bank?" "Don't be silly, you don't have any money." "Every time I come here, you always say I don't have any money." "Fine then, how much would you like?" Now, I know that just sounds like 20 seconds of craziness, and I do apologise, but it's the best way to easily demonstrate. "Are you okay?" starts with A. "But why do you ask?" starts with B. "Can't you see I'm trying to make a withdrawal?" starts with C. I'm amazed I can even remember my own dialogue. "Don't be silly" starts with D, and you get the idea. A, B, C, D. Now, that is a traditional alphabet scene. A reverse alphabet scene is the exact same principle, except for the order of the alphabet goes backwards. So instead of going A, B, C, D, it would go D, C, B, A. Now, when people play this just like a normal alphabet scene, sometimes they can go wrong. And the first thing I'll say is don't be afraid of going wrong in anything you do improv-wise, because people go wrong all the time. If you go wrong, the audience will find it funny. The only thing that they don't find funny is if you go awkward. If you just stop and do nothing because, oh, I can't do this, oh, I feel embarrassed, then you will project your awkwardness to the audience. And it's easier said than done to not do that. But don't be afraid of going wrong. If you don't know what you're doing, just do something anyway. If you skip a letter or go back the letter, the audience will think that this is very funny. They'll be a little bit like, oh, you're going wrong. But if you kind of just sell it with the character, you tell the story, then they'll forgive you. If you stand there and do nothing, then they'll feel awkward too. So the tip is, before you even get going on anything, the most important thing is to keep the scene going, to keep telling the story. And that should be your main goal with pretty much every improv game, is by all means try to follow the rules, try to adhere to the rules of the short form games. But if you can't, and you legitimately can't, then just do something, and that's better than doing nothing. Now, if you can play by the rules but decide not to for some reason, make it a good reason. If you're going to play by the rules, if you can play by the rules but you decide to purposely not, then sometimes that won't feel quite as successful, because the audience will be like, well, they were told the rules and they just didn't do it. But that's something to be mindful of. If you can't play by the rules, just do something rather than nothing. If you can play by the rules, I'd always encourage you to do so. But very occasionally you could break a rule if there's a good comedic opportunity, or it really will add to the story that's being told. So, the tips for playing the regular alphabet scene, and I will just remind you that there was a previous episode of this. Let's see if I can tell you when the previous episode was that focused on the regular alphabet scene. That was January 28th, 2020. Because of the whole pandemic thing, I've not done as many of these episodes as I should, which seems crazy. But it's because I've spent all my time doing the streaming shows online. So, getting back to doing the podcasts feel good, and being able to share some of these skills. If you're doing a regular alphabet scene, then the tip I will give people is, if you start on the letter A and you say, animals are running all around the house. As soon as you've said that, you still need to listen to what your scene partner is saying, because they're going to give you stuff that will bounce off of what you said, and then you can bounce off of what they said. However, as soon as you said animals are running around the house, you can go in your head A, B, C, and then you know that your next letter is C. And the second player, they'll say whatever they want to say. Bears are destroying the furniture. You already know that they're saying about bears are destroying the furniture. You already know that your next letter is C, because you went in your head A, B, C. And so when they say bears are destroying the furniture, you could instantly come in with calm down, and you could just come to any word beginning with C. It doesn't matter what it is, as long as you come in with a word beginning with C, then you have successfully adhered to the rules of the game. However, if you are able to go A, B, C, and know that you're queuing yourself up for C, listen to what the scene partner has said, and they say that bears are destroying the furniture, you could say, chairs! Make sure the bears don't destroy the chairs, and then you have linked the name of a piece of furniture, which was what was referenced in the other player's line. And that is the sweet point, because you could do something which goes along the flow of the alphabet but doesn't make any sense, because you still need to listen. You need to listen, and this is just about tips for how to cue yourself up to get the right letter, because that's the bit people struggle with. If you were just doing a scene together without these rules being in place, you might just say, There are animals running amok in the house. Bears are destroying the furniture. Do something, we need to kill them. Get out of here. Hippopotamuses are everywhere, and you'll notice that I haven't gone ABC. Now, you can just do this, and you can just come up with something which is continuing to add to the theme of the story, and that would just be a regular scene, a straight scene without any rules attached to it. But the challenge of an alphabet scene or a reverse alphabet scene is that you have the rules attached to it, which are that every line of dialogue should begin with the next letter of the alphabet. So the first tip here is to cue up the next letter in your head. Animals are running about the house. In your head, you then say A, B, C. They say bears, whatever, you say chairs shouldn't be destroyed. As soon as you've said that, you say C, D, E. Because we all know our alphabets, or hopefully we do. And if we don't, this is an opportunity for you to practice it and learn it a bit more. But we can all go in our heads A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. Or Z, as people in some parts of the world will pronounce it. But you can all do that. So all you're doing is taking the letter you're at and going on two more. A, B, C. C, D, E, E, F, G, G, H, I, J, K. And it is this simple. And then if you're on the second part of it, if you're on the B, if you start on the letter B, then it is simple of going B, C, D, D, E, F, F, G, H. And get used to doing that, because literally that is all you will ever have to do on a regular alphabet scene to cue yourself up for the next letter. It is that simple. That is the thing you just need to have that just plays in your head. See it as a full stop to whatever you have said. As soon as you've finished saying your line, you cue up the next one. So if I was to say, help, there are chimpanzees in my laundry, then I know that started with H, so as soon as I finish that sentence, I can go H-I-J. That becomes your full stop. You punctuate whatever you said in your mind by queuing up the next letter, which means that now you have the next letter. You can spend however long your scene partner is talking to listen and take in what they're saying, and then hopefully you'll come to a line of dialogue that will bounce off of what they have said. So go back to the original suggestion here. Animals are running amok in the house. Bears are in the laundry basket. That isn't what I said. Bears are destroying the furniture. Because we've got the idea of bears, we've got the idea of furniture. Now, a word beginning with C is what you're looking for. Is there something that you can find that connects to what was said? So yes, chairs, cushions, let's see what else. Anything cubs relates to bears. So cute bears though, aren't they? But cubs directly links to bears because you get bear cubs, the baby bears. And if you can tie that in, the audience will get the reaction where they'll be like, oh, this is so clever. Oh, how did he come up with that? Or she, or whatever. It doesn't matter about the about that aspect. But they'll be like, how did they come up with that? You know, it'll be like, that was really clever. So keep this in mind. Connect the next word to the scenario. Connect the next word directly to what the previous player said. So if, for example, it was Fred is growing really tall. F, Freddy begins with F. Fred is growing really tall. What do you do on the next one? You've got G. Growing really tall. You can easily just take the words that they gave you. If they gave you a word that starts with your next letter and you can bring it into your next sentence, that will sound pleasing to the audience's ears. Now, obviously, Freddy's growing really tall. Growing really tall, I hear you say. That's a very simple sentence which doesn't really add to the story. So what I'd say is in that case, and keep in mind with an alphabet scene, it's a line of dialogue. It's not literally you get to say one sentence. So one line of dialogue might be multiple sentences long. You shouldn't make them too long, there's a couple of reasons. I'll come back to that in a little bit. But so Fred is growing really tall. Growing tall, he's huge. Growing tall, his father always was a really short man. How did this happen? Is he not his son? So there's things you can do to continue and add to the story, but you might be able to take a word from the previous player's line of dialogue, which can inspire and connect, and that will sound pleasing excuse me, to the audience. Now, again, you could just find... let's see if I can find something that connects to that. Fred is growing really tall. If I can't use the word growing, but I want to find something that connects. Now, that didn't give me... Ginormous. Ginormous connects to the word tall. And they'll be like, that was clever. Fred is growing really tall. Ginormous he is. It's like, tall, ginormous. They connect. They're related words. And once again, it's pleasing to the audience. Now, you don't have to do this, but these are the tips to level up your alphabet scenes. So, it could be, Fred is growing really tall. Get out of here. He's a very short boy. You could say that and that would be fine. You've successfully started your next line of dialogue with the next letter of the alphabet, which, if nothing else, is what you were aiming for. So, a couple more tips, and then people are going to be wondering now, what about the reverse alphabet scene? I'll come to that in a second, because all of these tips are still very relevant. The game is played exactly the same whether it's a forwards alphabet scene, or a reverse alphabet scene, or a QWERTY alphabet scene, or a Dvorak alphabet scene. It doesn't matter, the principles stay the same. They might be slightly different if you do a NATO phonetic alphabet scene, but all of this, me saying these different types of alphabet scene, is just an excuse for you to tune in another time when I cover them, or to pick up a copy of the Extreme Improv Big Book of Improv Games, which is available in paperback or Kindle editions all around the world from Amazon. Yes, that is the book I wrote, and it does explain how to play so many of the games I cover on this podcast. And it's all written out in a very clear way, which is easy to understand whether you're an experienced improviser or not. So I would recommend you check them out. But let's see. If you're doing an alphabet scene, occasionally you'll be able to cheat on certain letters. And if you do this knowingly, the audience will enjoy it. The most obvious one, which is relevant to this show, is the letter X, as in Extreme Improv. Now, Extreme obviously begins with an E. In the case of Extreme Improv XStreamed, which is like I did a streaming show with an X at the front, so XStreamed, that literally does begin with an X. But the word extreme, E-X-T-R-E-M-E, begins with an E. You can completely get away with that in an alphabet scene. Exactly. And the audience will be like, oh. The audience will be like, aha, you were clever there. Now, if you do multiple alphabet scenes within one show, and more than one player does that with the letter X, the audience will be less impressed. And I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is. So, do play with that carefully. Play with it sporadically, because if you do it too much, the audience will turn against you. So, now let's come on to the reverse alphabet scene. The reverse alphabet scene, first of all of what I said here applies. The only thing that changes, so once again, everything applies. Finding words that connect to what was said, finding words that connect to the theme, taking words out of the previous player's line of dialogue to inspire and start your next. That is all the same here. The thing that is different is that instead of going A, B, C to punctuate your thought, you'll go C, B, A. And it's that simple. So, let's see. I'm probably going to mess this up. If I can go through the alphabet backwards, just off the top of my head. So, Z, Y, X, W, V U T S R Q P O N M L K J I H G F E D C B A. Ta-da! That took me longer than it should have done, because I have not been practicing just saying my alphabet in reverse. And so it isn't quite as simple for most people. And once you get used to it, it will be. I haven't played this game in a little while myself, and just trying to go through the whole alphabet meant that I didn't have the same thinking time as I would literally when I'm playing the game. So when I'm playing the game, I might go ZYX, and then I would go from X, XWV, and I think that's correct. I may have even messed up here, but literally if you did mess up, like I said, the first idea I gave you is it doesn't matter if you mess up. If you skip a letter, then afterwards the audience might be like, oh, you skipped a letter, or someone will be like, you skipped a letter, or you might be in the scene and your scene partner might be like, you skipped a letter. And if you do that in a scene, just to give this thought, do it, but don't expect them to. Always try to push on. If someone skips a letter, generally either you pick up the letter they've missed, and then you might swap who's doing A and who's doing B, to give that example. So it might be that if you go A and then the next person goes C, you could go, but you missed B, and then something like, oh, and now they'll go, calm down, I didn't mean to. And now, whereas you are on the A, C, E pattern, it may mean that you've jumped tracks and you've switched. That doesn't matter so much. But what I would usually say is, rather than go backwards, always go forward. So again, using the forward alphabet scene as the example, if you go, are you okay? And the next person goes, couldn't be better. And you could acknowledge it, or you could just skip on going, didn't you mean to say a word beginning with B? And I would say it's better just to say, don't be like that, and don't even acknowledge it. Because if you acknowledge it, then the audience will be aware. You might get a laugh, but then you'll put yourself and your scene partner in the position of thinking, oh, do we go backwards? Do we go forwards? If you've skipped, just keep going. Just keep going is what I'd say is the best thing to do. If you're less experienced, absolutely keep going. If you're more experienced and your scene partner's more experienced, you might be able to have fun with the fact that you've skipped something, but you don't want to confuse yourselves of, are we going backwards, are we going forwards? But anyway, so let's start in the middle of the alphabet, and we'll say, a character might say, hello, I'm here to rob the bank. Get away with that gun, please. Fine. It was only made out of a banana anyway. Eat it then if it's a banana. And that's going backwards. That's an example. H, G, F, E, and so on. So you just cue yourself in the head. So if you're at E, then you go E, D, C. Then you go C, B, A. And often alphabet scenes will start at a random point of the alphabet. So I've given examples of it starting at A. I said about the alphabet going backwards starting at Z. But it might start at H. So if it starts at H, then you'd have to go in your head, whatever you say, hello, I'm going swimming today. As soon as you've said that, you have to go H, G, F. And then from there, you go F, E, D. Then from there, you go D, C, B. And from there, you go B, A, Z. Because you will end up going backwards through the alphabet if you started at a random position. And from there, it'd be Z, X, Y. X, Y, Z. No, I did that wrong. Z, Y, X. And it's easy to go wrong. But again, just forgive yourself if you go wrong. It doesn't matter. It's all just a silly little improv game. It'll be over within a couple of minutes. Often, alphabet scenes are played to a 90-second time limit. And that's usually a good thing. Now, I mentioned earlier about that you could have multiple sentences. So it doesn't have to just be one sentence per line of dialogue. So, for example, if it was, please don't shoot me. I don't know why everything's about bank robbery. It's what the scenario I gave earlier, so stick with it. Please don't shoot me begins with a P. And then the next player might be like, oh my god, you don't want to be shot? No, I don't want to be shot. Mummy doesn't want to be shot. Now, they were just one sentence long. But what you could have done is, please don't shoot me, full stop. I have so much to live for. Oh my goodness, they don't want to be shot. Oh my goodness, they don't want to be shot. And then it might be a following up sentence. What's it worth? Oh my goodness, they don't want to be shot. What's it worth? Not a clue. How much money could I give you? Is 2 sentences. Now it could go really far. Mother, he doesn't want to be shot. How much should I insist that we give him? Or perhaps we should get him to do something really embarrassing, like tar himself and wear feathers and a tutu and go and sing the Swedish national anthem in front of his girlfriend. And that's a really long sentence. Well, it's not one sentence, it's multiple sentences, which is a lot for that, for the next player to keep track of. Oh my god, what is my next letter? Now, hopefully they will have queued themselves up to be like, N, M, L. And listen, are you ever going to let me have a word in edgeways? Now, you could do that, but also think of your audience. Your audience are trying to keep track of who's on A, who's on B, who's on C. If it's going reverse, they have to work just as hard as the performers. So they're like, oh, Z. What comes next? Y. Oh, and then X. X, Y, oh, X. W, X. W is next. And if you're then putting in multiple sentences where it's like, Xavier, I wouldn't do this at all because in 1996 I met a man, he worked in a shop. They're like, oh god, all this information, what's the next letter? The promise you have made to the audience is you're going to do a scene where each line of dialogue starts with the next or the previous, in the case of the reverse alphabet scene, previous letter of the alphabet. If you put in very long lines of dialogue, then the audience themselves will lose track of what you're trying to achieve. And since you can impress them by achieving what you're trying to achieve, or since you can make things fun by going wrong on achieving what you're trying to achieve, the only way the audience will know if you have or have not been successful in achieving what you were trying to achieve is by making it clear. If you add in too many sentences to your line of dialogue, your other performers will get lost and your audience will get lost. So then they won't know if you're achieving it, and whether you're successful and they'll be impressed, or whether you're unsuccessful and they'd find it funny. If they've got lost and don't understand what you were trying to achieve, then that's the least successful option out of the 3. So with the 90-second time limit, it adds a franticness to the proceedings. So once again, I'll use a forward alphabet scene, because obviously as I'm demonstrating these, it is just me on my own, so I don't have any thinking time. But if it is a case of are you going to eat that cake? Bobby said I could have the cake. Calm down here, dear. Bobby's my favourite friend. He said I could have it. Drink some tea and shut your mouth. Eat your cake and shut it in your pie hole. Whatever. The point is, I'm rattling through those. If you've got 90 seconds, you don't want to have a lot of thinking time in between, so you want to cue yourself up on the next letter and you want to rattle through. Because so often performers will not get to the end of the alphabet. There are 26 letters in the alphabet. Often the way this game is played is that if you start on the letter A, people might go through to the letter Z, or they might end back on the letter A. But traditionally, if you start anywhere other than the letter A, you'll always end on the letter that you started on. So if you start on K, kill me softly with your hands, and then you go all the way through K, L, M, N, O, P, etc., you'll get back to K, and rather than stopping the letter before K, you'll say, King Kong was here, and now he is gone. I don't know. But the point is, you end on the same letter you start on, which means there are 27 stages to this scene, 27 lines of dialogue in traditionally 90 seconds is quite a lot to get through. If you don't get all the way through, it doesn't matter. If you only get 10 letters through, then the audience will feel that you haven't quite fulfilled your promise, that you didn't really achieve it, that you didn't get near. If you're 2 or 3 letters out, then they'll be like, oh, we didn't quite make it. And I would always encourage, if you're in the scene and you can see the timer, acknowledge, oh, we didn't make it. If you are the MC and you're not in the scene, acknowledge, oh, they didn't make it, but give them a round of applause anyway. The aim of this is to make it an entertaining scene. The rules is just something for the audience to engage with that you're trying to achieve. Why are you doing a scene where each line of dialogue starts with the next letter of the alphabet? There's no logical reason for why the story you're telling needs to be done that way. It's just a challenge. And if you attempt to complete the challenge, the audience will be watching, 1, to see if the scene is entertaining, but 2, will you complete the challenge that you've set, or has been set for you, or you set yourself? If you don't complete the challenge, then the audience might be like, oh, they didn't do it. But if you're close to completing the challenge, you'll be like, oh, you were so near. And it's these kind of responses from the audience that you're trying to elicit. You want the audience to want you to do well. If you don't do well, then don't worry, the audience will be on your side because they want you to do well. Or they want to see you fail spectacularly. But either way, hopefully, they'll be wanting to see you give it your all, and they'll be on your side to try. Either way, even if they want you to go wrong, it's because going wrong is funny. And if you go wrong, then it tells them it's okay for them to go wrong. There's so much psychology, audience psychology, in improv and in performing in general. And that's one of the most powerful things you can learn, is that whether you go wrong or whether you do it right, it can both be a win. If you skip a letter, the audience might feel, oh, they skipped a letter, and they feel good about themselves because they noticed you skipped a letter. If are they likely to feel annoyed that you skipped a letter? It's not impossible, but I doubt it. Generally they'll just enjoy, you're so silly, I'm so clever, I noticed that you went wrong. And if they feel like, oh, you cheated, you skipped there, or you said exactly instead of starting it with an E, then you've elicited an emotional response from them, which means you win. If you cheat, then they'll be like, oh, that was crafty, or they'll be like, oh, they shouldn't do that. Either way, you've got an emotional response out of them, which is a win. Hopefully you don't get a negative emotional response out of them. But you can absolutely have fun. Doesn't matter winning or losing. You can play this game with the competitive element, with the competition element, with the challenge element, and adding in the reverseness to it, the reverse alphabet scene, just adds this extra layer of challenge, which is something that the audience can be excited about, especially how many audiences that have been watching Whose Lines It Anyway for decades, how many audiences that have been to a bunch of improv shows have even seen a reverse alphabet scene. Now, with Extreme Improv, I came up with the idea of this game, and again, maybe someone else has come up with it, maybe someone's done it once, maybe someone did it one time for a goof, thought it was hard, it was never repeated. But one of the reasons why this is a staple Extreme Improv game is because with the name Extreme Improv, it sounds more challenging, and the audience enjoy the fact that this is suddenly a challenging thing. And it means that in a show you can have an alphabet scene, and then, yes, you can have a reverse alphabet scene. So, anyway, these were some thoughts on a reverse alphabet scene. I hope it's been useful. Spoke about it for just over half an hour. Got in a cheeky plug or two along the way. I'll do a couple more cheeky plugs now just as we wrap things up here. I'll remind you to head over to the website www.extremed.tv, and you'll find everything Extreme Improv related there. And that will include all of our podcasts on the Extreme Podcast Network. That will include Extreme Improv Plus, where you can watch any of our previous shows, tons of videos about pop culture. You can see the Geek Battle show, the Slam Jam wrestling comedy panel show. You can see Totally Sketchy, which is our art-based show. You'll also find on Extreme.tv loads and loads of articles. You'll find articles about improv, articles about movies, articles about wrestling, about video games, about travel. You can see the Jet Lagged and Loving It travel vlog series. There's loads and loads of stuff there. Please do check it out. Now, at the moment, and if you're listening to this in the future, this may become past its sell-by date, but for right now it's brand new and fresh. If you go over to Extreme.tv, you can find out all of the information about the Extreme Improv XStreamed World Championship Festival 2021. We are currently looking for performers to apply to take part in the Extreme Improv XStreamed World Championship 2021. Last year we had a 64-person tournament, and Ashley Edwards, one of our regular performers on Extremed, was the 2020 World Champion. Only one person can be the 2020 World Champion. That could be you. It will be by playing short form improv games, and it will be taking place between the 19th of July and the end of July. The festival itself will run on into August, and there will be workshops, there will be guest shows. So if you're a workshop leader and you want to teach people how to play improv games, or you want to teach people a particular skill, long form, singing, any of it, do get in touch. The application form, whether you're wanting to take part in the tournament, whether you have a guest show, whether you want to teach a workshop, whether you want to do stand-up comedy or some other theatre or something else, sketch show, we are willing to hear from you all. Do get in touch. You can find the Extreme Improv Facebook page at facebook.com/Extreme Improv. Message us on there, give us a like on there as well. Main one I'd say always to support the channel is go and subscribe on youtube.com/Extreme Improv. It's free. You'll be able to hear all of our audio podcasts on there. You can also get the audio podcasts on any of your favourite podcast platforms. So wherever you are listening to us, I thank you. And until next time, stay safe, always stay extremed, and ciao for now.